What's up, everybody? Demon back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing the 28th episode of Godzilla-Thon. This one will be my review for Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. Now, this movie kind of caught me off guard. It kind of took me by surprise because of how, I don't want to say good it was, because I still don't like the movie, but how not bad it was compared to what I thought it was going to be. Originally, I remembered this movie being very slow, very boring. There was just a lot of unnecessary things going on. I always hated the character because in my mind, the main character was the little kid. I didn't have any good memories of this movie. And then I watched it and realized that a lot of the problems I have with the movie don't really exist. Now I have new problems with the movie, but I kind of went into this movie with the bar set so low that I kind of had to like it when it didn't have anything that I thought it had in it. So I'm going to get into this review, and it's going to be kind of weird because I still haven't really gathered my thoughts on this movie, you know? I hated this movie for so many years, and now I watched it, and it's not like I said, it's not like I like the movie. I still don't like the movie, but it's definitely not on my top 5 most hated movie list anymore for Godzilla movies. I mean, actually, it might be, but it definitely wouldn't be on the list for the same reasons that it was the first time, which was originally, like I said, I just thought it was a super slow, boring movie. And I remember as a little kid, there were things about it that I totally remember different than how they were actually in the movie, and we'll talk about that later on. Now, I do want to say here, this is the first time I've watched this movie in probably 4 or 5 years. Usually when I do Godzilla-Thon, I don't make it this far, or I skip this movie. Like, the furthest I ever made it in Godzilla-Thon was Final Wars, and that was back in 2014-15, that school year. And by the end of the school year, I had made it to around Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, and so then from there, I kind of just skipped around. I skipped to Destroya, I skipped Space Godzilla, skipped straight to Destroya, watched Godzilla 2000, skipped to GMK, and then skipped to Final Wars. So, I don't know, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie last, so I have some pretty fresh thoughts on it. And initially, as a little kid, this was something that always bothered me, and it still does sort of bother me, but not to the extent that it did when I was little. Is the movie starts out with a pretty awesome intro. It starts out with Godzilla in the 1954 movie attacking Tokyo. It's like this new version of stock footage, which sounds weird, but it is stock footage from the 54 movie with their new Godzilla inserted, overlaid over the old Godzilla. As a little kid, this would drive me insane because I always never understood how could Godzilla look like he does in this movie. That's not what he looked like in the old original movie. I was always so mad, like, why wouldn't they just use the footage from the original movie? Why did they have to re-record it? They ruined it. That's how I always saw it. They ruined it by using the new design because, like I said last video, I've never liked this design. And, I don't know, as a little kid, that just used to drive me nuts, the idea that they would re-record the new Godzilla over the original Godzilla. It just drove me insane. I could not understand why they would do that. Now, you know, I'm older, I get it. They wanted it to look more modern. They wanted it to be in line with their new continuity. They wanted Godzilla's design to be consistent throughout the movie, but I still do prefer that 54 design over this one. So we start out with a modern-ish version of the 54 attack, which is a very cool idea. Now, in this timeline, Godzilla doesn't die. At least from what I can understand, he never dies. So in this timeline, when Ogata, Emiko, and Serizawa sit down to have a conversation about using the oxygen destroyer, Serizawa refuses and does not use the weapon, and so therefore Godzilla is never killed off in this timeline. And that is a pretty interesting idea in and of itself. I would actually like to see a movie set in a universe with those original characters where Serizawa doesn't use the oxygen destroyer. That'd be a super interesting universe to have a story take place in. So Godzilla doesn't die in this universe, and he's just around, and he frequently attacks Japan since then. So in 1966, he attacks nuclear power plant. I really like how each time we cut to, like, we do a time skip and we're seeing Godzilla's destruction, we get more and more color every time. So it's like we start out in black and white, now we have some slight color, and it just does that every time we jump, which is a really interesting thing that they do. So it turns out Godzilla's been attacking nuclear power plants all across Japan, so Japan gives up their nuclear energy. They also have recently moved their capital to Osaka. Now Japan relies on dams and solar energy, but they're in an energy crisis, so Japan starts using plasma-powered energy, but Godzilla soon attacks Osaka because, I guess in this continuity, he does not like energy. So he goes after the plasma energy. The JSDF try to stop him, but they don't really do a great job. It's just like 12 dudes with some rocket launchers. Now, Godzilla in this movie, I would say, is both weaker and stronger than usual. Somehow, he survives a black hole being shot point blank at him, but at the same time, he also is heavily affected by military weapons, such as just standard rocket launchers in this movie, which is very interesting. The fact that I don't understand how this Godzilla could be weak enough to be injured by these rocket launchers or be annoyed by them, whereas usually he'd just walk it off without even noticing, and at the same time he's strong enough to survive a black hole. Like, that doesn't make too much sense to me. So the special effects in this movie are pretty great. There are some shots that are incredibly laughable, especially towards the end of the movie during the final battle. I feel like the special effects budget did not go to the ending, 30 minutes of this movie. It went everywhere else. So it just becomes really noticeable when all of a sudden the special effects just aren't as good as they were in this opening sequence. And we also have a new composer for this movie. Her name is Michiru Oshima, and she is generally considered by fans of Godzilla to be the second big Godzilla composer. She is second to Ifukube. Now, in my personal opinion, Masaru Sato comes before her, but that's just because I always like his crazy music style. And she does kind of have something similar to what he has, although she has a lot more of a Ifukube feel to her music with a lot heavier bass and brass, but she still uses the same type of percussion and the same kind of chord progression as Masaru Sato used. She's also our main composer for the Millennium era of Godzilla, and I do take back what I said. I feel like last video I was just kind of salty that I had to watch this movie, and so I was bagging on the music in this movie. Definitely take that back. The music in this movie and the music in all of her movies, which is Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, she does not do GMK, she does Godzilla against Mechagodzilla and Godzilla Tokyo SOS. The music in all of those movies are fantastic. She does such a great job, and Godzilla's new theme is super awesome. This scene is done with some proper suspense, which really gives it a great feel and sets up potentially a good movie. Like, this has the same sort of syndrome as I felt 98 did. Amazing setup, not that great payoff. So this movie, this first scene, just sets the bar so high with how good the movie's going to be. With great suspense, the music is just awesome and slow, the build-up is incredible. It's done very, very well. And also, this movie does something that I hate in Godzilla movies, but at the same time, it does it right. This movie, as well as Godzilla 2000, I definitely don't think have too much of a problem showing Godzilla right off the bat. Both movies kind of start out with the Godzilla attack sequence, but neither movie, I feel like, drags on as a result of it in the way that Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 did. Godzilla attacks an energy facility and kills a soldier who's the superior of our main character Tashimura. We cut to 2001 when an engineer named Kudo is taken by Tashimura to work for the G-Graspers. Now, the G-Graspers are this continuity's version of G-Force, which is the task force designed to take down Godzilla. The plan is to shoot a black hole at Godzilla and suck him straight into it. That's just the G-Graspers' plan. It's kind of far-fetched, but I mean, it's a cool idea. So they will attack him from space, which is why Kudo's all excited. He's like, oh, this is groundbreaking. So he joins in the project and helps out the G-Graspers in creating a miniature black hole. He specializes in miniature technology. Now, the thing with this movie that really gets me upset is the fact that this movie would have been an amazing solo Godzilla movie. The first scene of this movie shows straight up that this movie could have been an awesome solo movie for Godzilla. He would have been very menacing, and it would have just been if they had stuck to the same general plot, very, very intimidating. This would have been a great movie. However, they had to insert Megaguirus in here, and everything that I dislike about the movie comes from Megaguirus. I just think he's a weak villain and takes away from the really interesting stuff in the movie. If I was going to remake this movie, I would entirely cut out Megaguirus and his storyline, and I would leave the whole movie to be about these people trying to shoot a black hole at Godzilla to devour him because he's too strong. There's nothing else they can do. Godzilla is just wiping out cities left and right. I really like the idea of what if Godzilla was the reason that Tokyo flooded later on in the movie. There's so much that you could do with this, whole solo with this movie if you just took out Megaguirus and gave everything to Godzilla. It would also be much more intimidating that way. And also, this movie has a very odd shift in tone where it starts out pretty serious, and then as the movie goes on, it becomes very campy until the final fight just seems like it came straight out of a late Showa movie. Godzilla starts moving around in the ocean and freaking everybody out. 3 months later, a young boy who, for all you Brandon Tenold Mystery Science Theater fans out there, we're just going to call Kenny, runs off looking for bugs, I guess. I guess that's a thing he does because, what else are you going to do in your free time? You can hang out with friends, or you could go look for bugs in the woods. So he finds Kudo and the G-Graspers testing out their black hole device. It works, but leaves a temporary wormhole, or at least we're led to believe it's temporary. It's seen in the movie a lot longer. It's seen in the movie after we see it dissipate, so I'm not totally sure what to make of it. And also, does that mean that there's potential for multiple wormholes to be in this universe? Because they test this black hole device 3 times in the movie. So I'm wondering if there's multiple wormholes just floating around in this universe that are just these big gateways to another dimension. It's an interesting idea that they never do anything with. So the military catch Kenny, and he has all kinds of sexist to Tashimori, asking her why a girl would be fighting Godzilla. Because girls can't do anything brave. They're girls. A huge human-sized insect flies out of the wormhole and lays an egg where Kenny can just find it, I guess. Just kind of like puts it in the dirt, and he runs outside and he finds it straight away, and then he just takes it back, and now he's got himself an egg. Which also, he moves houses, and he takes the egg with him. Like, what? So he moves houses, takes the egg with him, and then he's afraid of the egg because it starts sliming everywhere, so he just throws it away. He throws it down the sewer. I don't even know. So also, if I guess Meganula is what laid the egg. If these Meganula are smart enough to be like, we're gonna inhabit this planet, wouldn't they also be smart enough to know that they have to lay their egg in water? Because the Meganula we see lays its egg in the dirt, Kenny finds it and drops it in the sewer, which is the only reason it has the ability to turn into a Meganeuron. So I don't know. He throws it in the sewer, and Kudo makes Tashimura some sort of transmitting bullet. That's one of the cool aspects of this movie. The egg divides into something. Originally I thought it divided into multiple eggs, but it doesn't. It just kind of like pieces fall off of it, and it divides into something in the sewer. It's a really weird scene that they never explain. The sewers start leaking all over the city. Again, that's not quite explained, presumably because of water displacement, because there's been so many Meganulas or Meganeuron eggs being laid inside of the sewers that the water level rises to that extent, I guess. A teen is killed by a large insect, and this insect is revealed later on to be the Meganeuron. The Meganeuron kills his girlfriend before evolving and flying away. If you're like, the Meganeuron, that name sounds familiar, that's because the Meganeuron is a throwback to the original Rodan movie. In the original Rodan, Meganeuron is what Rodan fed on. It is those little bugs that Rodan was eating that were killing all the miners at the start of the movie. That is what a Meganeuron is, and that's what the main antagonist of this movie is. Sort of. I guess Godzilla is, but the Meganeuron turn into Megaguirus, and he's the one in the title who's Godzilla's fighting, and really, Godzilla is the bad guy in this movie, and the Meganeuron just kind of shows up and is also trying to be the bad guy and take the spotlight away from Godzilla. Again, why would they do this? This was a perfect solo Godzilla movie, and they ruined it by trying to insert another villain in here. You don't have 2 villains in the same movie. It just gets distracting. I don't know. I really hate it. And no, I don't consider Godzilla 2000 to be the villain. He is not a hero, but he's definitely not a villain. He at least saves the Earth, and the line at the end of the movie, we're led to believe that he does it multiple times, so he saved the Earth quite a bit in that timeline. So I don't totally consider that Godzilla to be the villain. I consider him to be just kind of one of those like checks and balances out there in the universe. Same thing with the Heisei era. I definitely consider Godzilla to be the anti-hero throughout all of those. I don't care what anyone has to say. That's just my opinion. Tashimori tells Kenny that she is continuing her commander's legacy by fighting Godzilla, and that's why she fights Godzilla, because I guess he got her number or something, so he can call her up anytime he needs to chat. So Kenny discovers that the insect is a Meganula, the big flying one. Tashimori flies a jet out to intercept Godzilla, who is swimming around in the ocean. A Meganula dead body is spotted near Godzilla, so they're investigating the Meganula's body in the water, and it's kind of a cool scene to see them ride up on this big dead insect carcass and start investigating in the water. And just when that's all happening, just then Godzilla rises up out of the water. He rises to the water surface, which is really cool but kind of convenient. Why would he show up right then and right there? I don't know, but it's a cool scene because you just see Godzilla's spines come up from around the raft, and then the water pushes them out as Godzilla surfaces. It's a pretty sweet sequence. And then Tashimori rides Godzilla's back, which is awesome. The way she's one of one of the best protagonists from the Millennium era. I don't like her as much as I like some of the other ones, but I definitely think she's a much more likable character than anyone we got last movie. She shoots Godzilla with that tracking beacon that was made for her earlier, and then she gets out of there before the radiation can affect her. Or something. I don't know. It's not explained. She just kind of freaks out because some red gauge is going off and she runs away. Also, and again, we see how weak Godzilla is because his skin is able to be penetrated by this little pistol bullet that just has this tracking dart in it. And it also made me think of kind of a plot hole in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla is, if that Godzilla's skin was so indestructible, how are they able to pierce his skin with their tracking bullet that they put on his neck? Not totally sure, but I don't know if his skin was supposed to be unpierceable. We also know in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla that Yuki was going to shoot a coagulant bullet at Godzilla and kill him, so I'm not totally sure that Godzilla's skin was unpierceable. However, everything else we saw from the Heisei era would suggest us to believe that. Anyways, I guess you can pierce this Godzilla's skin with a little pistol bullet, and after that happens, he can tank a black hole, I guess. The SGS Search Godzilla system tracks Godzilla through the ocean. There's a lot less poor, really bad CGI in this movie, and a lot more really mediocre CGI, not necessarily PS1 levels like last time, but more like PS2 levels. But there's not as much bad CGI in here, or the CGI in here isn't as noticeably bad most of the time. At least on Godzilla anyways. These swimming scenes are actually really well handled. During all this, Kudo finishes the Dimension Tide, which is an awesome name. That is what they named the black hole device. So the Dimension Tide is launched into space. I think there's some NASA stock footage in here. I can't tell what it is, but it's definitely stock footage. It turns out that the Meganula live in swarms, which freaks everybody out, and they're extremely aggressive. The water tables under Tokyo rise to the level where the city is entirely flooded. I'm talking big, houses underwater, skyscrapers halfway flooded. I don't know where all this water came from. The water tables under Tokyo have risen. That's all they say. What does that mean? Does that mean that... Because earlier the sewers were flooding, and we know that was because presumably the Meganeuron had so much eggs down there that the water displacement rose to the point where the water was coming out of the sewer. But now what are we to believe? That there's nothing that I can explain that with. It's a cool idea. I would have liked if, Godzilla creates a huge tsunami and floods the city, kind of the 2014 aspect, what we saw with Godzilla coming on land, in a great solo Godzilla movie. Megaguirus is in here, and it's somehow his fault that the water tables have risen. I guess. I don't know. They don't explain it. And if they do, and I'm just an idiot and somehow didn't read that, because I am, for once, finally being able to review a Japanese Godzilla movie again, I did read the subtitles. If they just didn't explain it in the subtitles, or they did and I didn't see it, please tell me, because I have no idea how that happens. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess Tokyo's turned into a mass Meganula nest, or Meganeuron nest, whatever you want to call them. Godzilla is found sleeping in the ocean. The plan is to let Godzilla make landfall on a small island near Japan and deploy the Dimension Tide on him. It seems like the military is pretty effective on Godzilla in this movie, as they are able to lead him on shore by firing jet missiles at him and shooting him with all sorts of different machine gun weapons. And he seems pretty affected by him too. Like throughout the whole movie, anytime he gets hit by one of these things, he's looking around for where it's coming from. It really feels like it hurts him. So they are able to lure Godzilla on the island, and the JSD during all this, the JSDF discover thousands of Meganula. Godzilla lands and is attacked by the Godzilla lands on the island, and soon the Meganula from Tokyo fly away and they attack Godzilla, and the Meganulas start to take his DNA and fly away. It's really cool to see Godzilla this annoyed, however, the way it's filmed is kind of annoying. And it's funny because he's just annoyed by insects. Like, you see him picking them off him and throwing them on the ground. He's shooting them with the atomic breath, just trying to get them off of him, just trying to kill them all. It's an awesome, like, it's hilarious to see Godzilla this, like, annoyed with something that's attacking him. However, I don't really like all the angles of, like, his face smashing into rocks. It just looks weird. I'd like it if it was filmed a little different, or, like, the way he shakes his head's all awkward. There's a funny scene when he starts using his tail as a fly swatter to swat him off his back. And then there's a really cool part when all the Meganula land on his dorsal fins, and so he lights them up and starts frying them on his back. I really like this Godzilla's personality, where he just seems over it. He's just done. He's annoyed with everything. It's awesome. It's hilarious. So the Dimension Tide goes off. It's all over the place because the Meganula throw off the tracking, I guess, or at least that's what it said, even though we specifically see it lock onto Godzilla before it fires. Anyways, they fire the Dimension Tide. The black hole just, it devours everything, except apparently Godzilla just tanks it, and he's not affected by it somehow. He's like covered in rocks or whatever, but then he just quickly walks it off. This whole sequence, like I said, is filmed weird with Godzilla's shaking his head around, and he also has a really odd face. It's around this point in the movie when I noticed, I don't know if they did something different with his face. I know they did with his design this movie, but with his face sculpt itself, I don't know if they did anything different with it, but it just looks awkward compared to last movie. Maybe it's because it's filmed in daytime more, or maybe it's just that this movie has more close-up shots of his face to make me realize. The Meganula start feeding one big supreme Meganeuron that they have deemed the Queen Meganeuron. The Meganula die as the Megaguirus is born. Megaguirus looks awesome. He looks like a super, like, crazy version of the Meganula. Just looks absolutely awesome. I'd really like to see a fight in a movie between the Meganeuron, the Meganeuron. I'd really like to see a fight in a movie between the Megaguirus and Batra. That would just be an awesome fight. It feels a bit redundant, though, because we also saw a lot of the stuff that happens here with the Megaguirus landing on a building and destroying a city with these big shock waves. We saw that stuff with Orga, and this whole idea of, these creatures combining to form one big creature. We saw that with Destroya, and then we also saw the design similar with Batra, so it feels a little bit redundant of all those guys. Now, Godzilla heads for Japan. Kenny evacuates. I think this is the last time we see him. And it's funny where they mention he evacuates from Minatoa Ku. I don't know what that is. Like what city that is. Miratoa Ku, something like that, and Shinagawa Ku, and I don't know what Ku means, but Shinagawa is the city where the second form of Shin Godzilla, or technically third form of Shin Godzilla, attacks in Shin Godzilla, so I thought that was funny. Plus it has KU written after it, meaning it's Shinagawa Ku, almost Shinagawa Kun. Oh, it's like they foreshadowed everything. They knew the future. Oh, man. But I just thought that was funny, so I wrote it down. So Godzilla heads for Tokyo. Megaguirus attacks Godzilla to try and take Tokyo as its territory. There's a lot of weird motion blur in this movie, and anytime you're seeing the movie from the Megaguirus perspective, like it's filmed from what it's seeing, everything's really frame ratey and awkward, and I hate it. So it's a super clunky fight, a lot of just clashing into each other, and it looks really weird. A lot of the times the Megaguirus is just clearly like they took a picture of the suit in front of a green screen and have inserted it into the movie and are just dragging it around screen, attacking the Godzilla suit with it. Looks really cheap, and I hate it. This is what I'm talking about. By the end of the movie, all that great special effects from the start of the movie, it's all gone. It's all just clunky and goofy. So there's way too many close-up shots of Godzilla, and they last way too long. There's way too much shaky cam throughout this fight. Megaguirus, getting back into like the actual plot, what's happening in the battle, Megaguirus causes everything technical to crash, meaning like he creates such a high frequency with the buzz of his wings that no technology can be used, and it drops Dimension Tide out of orbit. Godzilla looks shocked and dumb far too often during this fight. He'll have these like crazy expressions and he'll be looking around all silly, and then like when he's being dragged around, he's waving his arms all crazy, and he looks stupid. I don't like it. I don't like how Godzilla looks really cool at the beginning of this movie, like he's gonna be like down to business, and then we see him just like annoyed, but by the end of the movie he's just like a bumbling idiot at this point. The fight music also kind of sucks. I know I praised the music earlier, but I really dislike this fight music. It sounds like something you'd hear in like Super Smash Bros. It just doesn't sound like Godzilla music. The sets look incredibly fake at this point in the movie, and there's a lot of silly Godzilla movements, like I said, with this weird... I can't stress this enough. His weird head shaking and movements look really dumb. He also does this super awkward run dodge move, and it looks bad. Megaguirus' arm is cut off by Godzilla's dorsal fin, which is a cool utilization of Godzilla's dorsal fins. Godzilla's really intelligent in this movie for the most part, which is really... it's interesting, and I quite like it. Godzilla also utilizes his tail a lot in this movie. There's, like I said earlier, that point when he's fly swatting these Meganeura or Meganula off his back, and then there's this point when Megaguirus flies up at him, and he catches Megaguirus' tail with his tail, and then throws Megaguirus into a building using only his tail. It's really cool. There's this awkward jump tackle, which Cinemassacre seemed to like, but I've always hated. And then there's a lot of weird visuals showing, like, just random stuff on Kudo's computer. He has like this weird nurse program that literally you can watch it visually delete viruses, which is dumb. I don't like that idea. Megaguirus has sucked out so much of Godzilla's atomic energy by inserting his tail spike right into Godzilla's, he sticks it right in Godzilla's groin multiple times and sucks out all his atomic energy. So then there's this point when Megaguirus generates an atomic blast, which is pretty cool the way that, he's absorbed so much radiation by this point that he just fires it all out at once. But it hurts Godzilla pretty badly. There's a scene where Godzilla gets hit by it and he stands there still motionless before he falls over. Godzilla stands up and is ready to fight, and there's this cool-ish mislead, and then it gets really dumb, where Megaguirus flies at full speed at Godzilla, and it looks like he stabs Godzilla right in the brain with his tail spike, and you think Godzilla's dead. And Godzilla's just standing there motionless, and then it just does freeze frame for some odd reason. And then it slow-mo pans around, which was really awkward, and you find out that Godzilla caught the tail, he got the blade in his mouth, he bites down on it, also in slow-mo, destroying it. Really, it's filmed very awkwardly. Godzilla uses his atomic breath to kill Megaguirus in one shot. This is the first shot Godzilla's landed on Megaguirus with his atomic breath, to my knowledge. And then there's lots of really bad special effects when the Dimension Tide is falling out of space. There's one shot that looks like it straight up came out of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 intro. That's how cheesy they look. And it just falls out of space. Turns out the reason Godzilla is attacking the city in the first place is because the leader, the guy in charge of the G-Grazers, continued energy research with plasma after Godzilla's attack in the 90s, leading to Godzilla attacking now because Godzilla hates non-nuclear and nuclear energy sources. The Dimension Tide, while falling out of orbit, fires at Tashimori, who set up the beacon on her so that she'd fly into Godzilla, and then Dimension Tide would go off. She flies this big huge jet right at Godzilla, ejects last second, flies away. The Dimension Tide goes off and a black hole sucks Godzilla completely up. He is completely erased off the face of the earth. Now, if you remember earlier, there would technically be a wormhole there and on that island that they shot it off earlier at, so I'm wondering what those wormholes are doing there. Of course, we never got a sequel to this movie movie, probably a good thing. But it is very, interesting to think about the fact that in this universe there are just wormholes floating around Tokyo. So like I said, Godzilla is eaten by Dimension Tide, and then we get some scenes after that. So the movie should have ended with this great shot of Tashimori looking at the destruction. Godzilla's gone. It's a personal victory for her, and then the movie just continues. Like, that would have been where I would have ended it. But the movie continues, and there's just these, like, everyone's doing well after the time skip, I guess. Kudo has a broken arm still because earlier in the movie Megaguirus knocked a building on him and he broke his arm during all that. But there's this like really weird like WTF freeze frame ending where Kudo and Tashimori are flirting with each other, and she accidentally like hits him right in the broken arm, and he goes, "Hey, that's my broken arm," and then she's like, "Oh my, I'm sorry," and it just freeze frames on her. And it just stays like that, and the ending credits start rolling over this freeze frame. And, like, there's no way for me to describe how awkward this ending is. You just have to watch it, because she literally, "I'm sorry," ends. Like, cuts her off right after she says that. Just freeze frame, ending credits roll. What? It's so bad. I hate it. This is honestly the worst ending for a Godzilla movie I've ever seen. It's so bad. It's so cheesy. And there's, like, this mislead setup too, because they're like, there's been seismic activity, potentially Godzilla. I don't know. Ha 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 ha. Well, I guess we'll never know because GMK is next, thank God. Thank God they took it to that place because that movie is awesome. So the human stuff in this movie, it's okay. It's pretty generic for the era. We have a lot of great female leads in this Millennium era, but they all have some sort of like guilt or whatever. Like they got this guy killed or something. They're trying to be military people. I don't know. We got a lot of this stuff. It's the same thing we see throughout the rest of the Millennium era, minus Final Wars and the GMK, and I guess technically Godzilla 2000. So the kaiju stuff in this movie, it's Godzilla's stuff is great. Godzilla is great in this movie. However, everything else, the Megaguirus, the Meganulon, the Meganeura, I'm getting all the names confused. All that stuff, everything with Megaguirus sucks. Godzilla's stuff, though, it's awesome. It's the best part of this movie. It's the biggest and only saving grace. The special effects, they're okay. Some shots in this movie are just so bad and so laughable that I can't be like, yes, this movie has great special effects like I could last time. So the music in this movie, like I said, it's composed by Michiru Oshima. She does a great job. Like, she really just great music in this movie. Overall, I don't like Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. This honestly isn't going to be one that I watch a lot in my life. This one's just going to be one of those ones that I let sit for a couple of years, then I can go back to it every once in a while and be sort of semi-surprised at how it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Honestly, I just never remembered even one good thing about this movie as a little kid, so it caught me off guard. The one thing about this movie that I can never forgive is what they do to Godzilla's design. They turn him into a green dinosaur. Alright? He's a red fire-breathing, green dinosaur with purple dorsal fins. Like, the green and purple look terrible on Godzilla. This isn't Hanna-Barbera. We don't need that. It looks ridiculous. Put him back into gray tone, black. It looks good when he's gray or black or brown. He does not look good when he's green. He never did. I never even thought Junior looked that cool when he was green. Junior's cool, don't get me wrong, but he didn't even look that great when he was green. I don't like the green on Godzilla. It just looks too generic, cartoony dinosaur. I hate it. I never like my Godzilla's green. Hanna-Barbera sucks, and it's green. It sucks, and anytime I see a green Godzilla, that's what I'm thinking of, is like that level of cheese. So, anyways, 6.5 out of 10. This movie's not the worst movie in the series, but it's definitely not the best. It's kind of bad. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time. D-Man, out.